Hello there, it's me, Randy Feltface, and today I'm gonna read you the Wikipedia page for the Rule of Saint Benedict because I have nothing better to do with my life besides my comedy routines, but whatever. Anyway, to quote Wikipedia, the Rule of Saint Benedict, Latin, Regula Sancti Benedicti, is a book of precepts written in Latin circa 530 by Saint Benedict of Nursia, circa AD 480 to 550, for monks living communally under the authority of an abbot. The spirit of Saint Benedict's rule is summed up in the motto of the Benedictine Confederation Pax, also known as Peace, and the traditional ora et labora, which means pray and work in Latin. Compared to other precepts, the rule provides a moderate path between individual zeal and formulaic institutionalism. Because of this middle ground, it has been widely popular. Benedict's concerns were his views of the needs of monks in a community environment, namely to establish due order, to foster an understanding of the relational nature of human beings, and to provide a spiritual father to support and strengthen the individual's aesthetic effort and the spiritual growth that is required for the fulfillment of the human vocation, theosis. The rule of Saint Benedict has been used by Benedictines for 15 centuries, and thus Saint Benedict is sometimes regarded as the founder of Western monasticism, due to the reforming influence that his rules had on the contemporary Catholic hierarchy. There is, however, no evidence to suggest that Benedict intended to found a religious order in the modern sense, and it was not until the late Middle Ages that mention was made of a quote-unquote Order of Saint Benedict. His rule was written as a guide for individual autonomous communities. All Benedictine houses and the congregations in which they have grouped themselves still remain self-governing. Advantages seen in retaining this unique Benedictine emphasis on autonomy include cultivating models of tightly bonded communities and contemplative lifestyles. Perceived disadvantages comprise geographical isolation from important activities in adjacent communities. Other perceived losses include inefficiency and lack mobility in the service of others, and insufficient appeal to potential members. These different emphases emerge within the framework of the rule in the course of history, and are to some extent present within the Benedictine Confederation and the Cistercian orders of the common and the strict observance. Here are the origins. Christian monasticism first appeared in the Egyptian desert before Benedict of Nursia, under the inspiration of Saint Anthony the Great, who lived from 251 to 356, ascetic monks led by Saint Pachomius, who lived from 286 to 346, formed the first Christian monastic communities under what became known as an abbot. From the Aramaic Abba, which translates to father. Within a generation, both solitary as well as communal monasticism became very popular and spread outside of Egypt, first to Palestine and the Judean desert, and thence to Syria and North Africa. Saint Basil of Caesarea codified the precepts from these Eastern monasteries in his ascetic rule, or ascesia, which is still used today in the Eastern Orthodox Church. In the West, in about the year 500, Benedict became so upset by the immorality of society in Rome that he gave up his studies there at age 14 and chose the life of an ascetic monk in the pursuit of personal holiness, living as a hermit in a cave near the rugged region of Subiaco. In time, setting an example with his zeal, he began to attract disciples. After considerable initial struggles with this first community at Subiaco, he eventually found the monastery of Monte Cassino in 529, where he wrote his rule near the end of his life. In chapter 73, Saint Benedict commends the rule of Saint Basil and alludes to further authorities. He was probably aware of the rule written by Pachomius, or attributed to him. And his rule also shows influence by the rule of St. Augustine of Hippo and the writings of St. John Cassian. Benedict's great depth, however, may be to the anonymous document known as the Rule of the Master, which Benedict seems to radically excised, expanded, revised, and corrected in the light of his own considerable experience and insight. Saint Benedict's work expounded upon preconceived ideas that were present in the religious community, only making minor changes more in line with the time period relevant to his system. The rule was translated into Armenian by Narcissus of Lampron in the 10th century and is used by the Armenian Catholic Macarius today. It was also translated into Old English by Athelwold. Here is the overview. The rule opens with a hortatory preface, drawing on the Adamito ad Filium Spiritualium, in which Saint Benedict sets forth the main principles of the religious life, viz., the renunciation of one's own will and arming oneself, quote-unquote, with the strong and noble weapons of obedience, under the banner of the true King, Christ the Lord, Pro 3. He proposes to establish a school for the Lord's service, Pro 45, in which the way to salvation, Pro 48, shall be taught, so that by persevering in the monastery till death, his disciples may, quote-unquote, through patience share in the passion of Christ, that they may deserve also to share in his kingdom, Pro 50, Passionibus Christi perpetuum. Oh my God, I am so tired. No offense or anything.